Welcome everybody here to the Martin E. Segal Theater Center at the Graduate Center CUNY. My name is Frank Henschke. I'm the director of the Segal Theater Center, our center, British Academia and Professional Theater, International and American Theater. And for many, many years, over 15 years, we have been part of the World Voices, originally in the Penn World Voices, a festival. It's a moment, it's a little bit complicated with the organization, and we are hosting our readings on our own. But still check out their event. But this is the very beginning, and I think it's the 15th or 16th around, and we had great writers from around the world here, and we have it again. So tonight we have Kate O'Reilly with us from Ireland, the UK, and she flew in just to share her work. So Kate, thank you. So much of American theater is British or American theater, almost 80% what we see in commercial theater is musical, the rest are plays, the American and British plays. The numbers of global work is very, very tiny, it's too small, it's a tunnel vision. We feel no musicians would just listen to the music from its very own country. It's actually important to be inspired and have an awareness. We live in a global world. Our problems we are facing, whether it's homophobia, if it's anti-feminism, racism, and all the things we experience now, it is global. The destruction of our Earth, the climate catastrophe, and I think our artists and playwrights, this is on their minds, and often do the work I feel that politicians should do. So this is an important event. It's the DNA of the Segal Center. We often call the United Nations of Theater here in New York, and I think there's a little bit to it. So we are truly grateful to the artists who come here, the directors who fly in, the translators who translate the works, the directors who translate the translation on stage, and then the actors who translate the translation of the translation, and they're acting it out. And we wish we had much more money like Columbia or NYU or other great things, or Harvard or Yale, but I think what we're doing here still levels up to, I think, a great contribution towards a cosmopolitan and a global awareness that we are all part of a civilized world. We would like to thank you, our live stream host. It is the great HowlRound.com. You can see all our programs on HowlRound. So thanks to BJ and Thea for making this possible, and important, I think, also initiative to share work online all across America. And they have been fantastic partners. Thanks to all our Segal team, Meg, Nureed, Anna, for making this happen. And before I give it over to Kate, who will say a little bit about her work, and she's, by the way, flying back tonight. So it's a great commitment you showed. Take out your phone and make sure it's on, what is it called? Silent, not ring. Take a moment. It never rings in our Segal events. So here we go. So Kate, come over here and tell us a little bit what we are about.
Thank you very much. Yes, I hope it's working and it's on. Yeah. First of all, my huge thanks to the Centre and to everybody that has been making this happen, making this possible, for inviting me, to glorious cast and director who you'll meet in a short while. I identify very proudly as a CRIP. I'm a disabled artist. I'm a disability artist. I have invisible impairments. And I decided some years ago, in 2010, that I was going to be the change that I wanted to see. And that was basically to make work solely and only to be performed by disabled, deaf, and neurodivergent actors, because I got frustrated with cripping up. I got frustrated with the representation of disabled, deaf, neurodivergent existence as something that was fearful or monstrous or used as a metaphor for non-disabled people's lives and their fears. So the Monologues came from many conversations I've been having with disabled, deaf, neurodivergent people, users and survivors of the mental health system, people living with chronic pain and long-term conditions. And I've been having many conversations over these decades, and then writing fictional monologues that was informed by lived experience, but they were fictional because I actually think we are our stories. So none of the things that I have written is actually taken from someone, because I personally would see that as theft. So what we're going to do just now is to share with you one of the D monologues. And they're called D monologues for deaf, disabled, diversity, dangerous, delicious, delectable, all the wonderful Ds. And so the D monologue that we're going to share before we then get into the meat of the evening is one of my personal favorites, which is called A Short History of Fear. And I'm going to invite one of our wonderful cast, Bree, to come and share that with us. So thank you very much.
I speak to you, the useless eaters, the mongs, the spazies, the shunned, the feared, those with differently abled limbs, minds, organs, senses, those intellectually challenged by hate and prejudice, not by brain circuitry. The schizos, the deafies, the crippled, the mad, bad, and dangerous to know, I salute you. By your existence, you threaten the narrow definition of human variety. You broaden the scope of Homo sapien possibilities. You challenge normalcy, the normative, norm, and he hates you for it. You with the Stevie Wonder eyes, the Parkinson's touch, the FDR strike and shuffle, your tush sitting in that chair proud. Let us carry you aloft in your chariot, you marvel. You scientific enigma, you medical conundrum, you gem of the genome. Oh, glorious freak of nature, let us cherish you and lay tribute at your miraculous, twisted feet. You brittle beauty, bone like a Fabergé egg, precious one, unique, you threatened, endangered species, let us save you for future generations. You rare jewel of genetic code, dodo diamond of DNA. Do you know, even for one moment, how extraordinary you are? You are the wonders of the past, the Cyclops, the Minotaur. No wonder they feared you with your capacity to be beyond what they could ever be just by breathing. You are the dragon of their folklore, the bogeyman of their chastising tales. No wonder they set out on crusades to destroy you, or, in later years, paid for the privilege to see you eat, walk, sleep, cry, turn your Gorgon eye towards them, your own limbs already petrified, manacled to the walls in the dungeons of their asylums. No wonder they queued to watch you swallow down their disabling pills and pushed for front row seats at the performance of your lobotomy. You sedated but still awake, wide-eyed at the stab of the stiletto into your brain via an eye socket, this their brutal attempt to subdue your visions and appetites. You, whose exquisite hands sculpt meaning into air, defying gravity and the root of all Indo-European languages, how they hate you for your visceral eloquence and synapse-firing brain so different from their own lit-up language centers. No wonder they tried to destroy you and deny your existence, force your mouth to shape as theirs, stamp on your culture and language as they tied your tongue behind your back. I speak to you, the rewired, reformed, resuscitated, you $6 million men and women. They now have the technology to rebuild you, but they will never surpass your audacious evolution. You are both historic and forthcoming, the monstered past and cyborg future. Oh, Darth Vader of their nights and dreams! You, who breathe water and have oxygen piped to your lungs. You molecular marvel who inhale pharmaceuticals and cough out spume. You amaze me. I am dazzled. I salute you all. You definitive shock and awe. You mercurial mutants. You species who both prove and disprove Darwin. Long may you continue. Long may you thrive. No wonder they feared you.
Thank you, Bree. Love that piece. Hello, everybody. My name is Katie Butler, and I have had, over the past few weeks, the immense joy and privilege of directing these wonderful humans in The Sisters Grey, which Kate O'Reilly has just finished writing the first draft.
Not even the first draft.
The draft of the draft.
It's the rough draft.
In addition to Kate working with us on this piece, we also have the amazing Bree Rothbart and Melissa Jennifer Gonzalez. Give them a quick round of applause. I don't have much to say beyond that. I'm just so excited and thrilled to share this work with you and to just be a part of this process. So thank you, and thank you, and thank you.
So, you want to, yeah, and we'll move you back. Is there good? Is that good? There we go. Is that all right for you? Yes. Right. So when I got invited to come, we did have a conversation about might there be something new that hadn't been shared, that had not been produced. And I went, well, I've been writing something. It's my first script for live performance in 5 years, since before the pandemic. And that was why some of the advance notices were saying there will be some work by Kate O'Reilly, because we were waiting to see if I could write a bit more, write enough for us to bring and share. And I'm very excited to have this opportunity, because I've written it's a raw draft. This is the rough draft. It's not even the polished first draft. But to have the opportunity to share this, to put this out in front of a discerning audience, to have the imaginations and the engagement and intelligence of my wonderful colleagues looking at the first couple of scenes which we're going to share is really special. So thank you very, very much. The Sisters Grey. The Grey sisters from Greek myth were born old, the offspring of minor gods who shared an eye and a tooth between them. Perseus stole these in order to get the secret of where the Gorgons were hiding, in order to destroy Medusa, which he did, decapitating her. Some stories say he returned the shared eye and tooth the grey eye needed to survive. Others say he left them in perpetual darkness.
1. A wasteland, nondescript, not domestic, but not outside either. A somewhere, mythic perhaps, undefined. Bare, but for low light, the sense of a distant sea. 3 sisters of great age, no sense of where they have come from, but somewhere just off. Ennio has a white cane. Dano uses a motorized wheelchair, and Pemfredo a rollator or Zimmer frame.
Old Ennio, named for horror.
Proud mohawk, sprouting from the famous gray hair, slumps forward in bovver boots and bondage trousers. White stick sweeping the path before her, scanning. Every inch a cliche of age-related crisis, she stops in a pool of light, closed eyes raised like a cold child, welcoming the touch of the sun. Old Dano, named for dread.
Ashen-skinned and white-haired, wheels into the light, clothed in an A-line skirt and charred twinset and pearls, once cashmere, now charcoal. Chin tilted, she senses the way.
Cautious, uncertain, scattering cinders and ashes.
Old Pamfredo, named for alarm.
Golden-haired and bronzer-cheeked, slides into the light, as she might have slid her ancient body into the saffron silk sheaths, split to the waist. Zimmer-framed, she walks on 2 high heels, teetering, elegant, mutton dressed spectacularly as age-inappropriate lamb. She stands at ease, confidence oozing. Her turn with the iron tooth.
You get used to everything eventually. Loneliness, hunger, lack of vitamin D, warmth. You acclimatize. All you need is time. You learn to make do, to even thrive, adjusting your body, evolving, a process of growth, even in diminishment. Blind gain, the expansion of no sight. Not that you ever saw. Not one of you. Not really.
True.
What would it be not to exist? Impossible to imagine the concept of death, much like the concept of youth. Unfathomable. We were born old, of the sea-flecked shore.
She's gone poetic again.
Said she, whose audio description was bad blank verse.
It needs to be heightened. At our age, we need the stimulus. Otherwise, it's all dark, all gray, all...
Shh.
You've said it all before.
Shut up. It's me now.
I know what you're going to say.
Stop it. It's my time for talking. My turn in the spotlight.
Is there a spotlight?
She's talking metaphorically.
Me, my solo. You've had yours, and I will have it again. But now it's me.
Thing is, she never has anything to talk about when it is her turn. No content.
You're ruining it. Shh. It's your turn to be silent and listen. My time to speak. To us, our parents were movie stars, immortals, yet they conceived us, goddesses of the foam.
Oh, God.
We were born old. Perhaps we never age. Just continue. Cells shedding like dust from an old book, silverfish.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
We have always been decrepit. If we become more, we don't notice, just as we don't notice our dead skin collecting on the shelves.
Wonderful word, decrepit. Adjective. In very bad condition because of being old or not having been cared for or having been used a lot.
Chance would be a fine thing.
Oh, to be used. To be put to work.
To have been cared for, not let molder.
Is that what you are? Mouldering?
Ignore her. Go on, I'm enjoying it now.
Is it going to continue so? No change, no adventure, just this continuous absolute? There must be some destination, some final act, a last breath, to expire, to be no more.
And now you're being absurdly dramatic.
What else is there to do for entertainment?
Who's that? Has somebody moved? Who's moving? Is that you, Fredo?
Just to stretch my legs.
Lucky for those who can.
I need to know when there's a rustling, a disturbance in the air. I need to know it's one of us and not...
He won't come again.
How do you know? We didn't expect him before.
True.
I wonder, did he carry her head by the hair so all could see as he passed?
He won't come again, will he?
Who knows? Others might.
Yes.
Swooping in.
Maybe at night.
Yes.
They could take us away.
Manacled.
Yes, with clip ties. Don't know if it's kidnapping, an abduction, or an arrest.
Same difference.
Premeditated or on a whim.
Tina, breathe. Breathe. And I thought my cortisol levels were alarming.
She is a catastrophist. Lives in a dreadful anticipation of horror. That's why they call her a gloomy, reactionary cunt.
Don't say it. Don't say that word.
Cutie. If it's all predetermined, stop fretting about intruders. If it's predestined, it will come. And no amount of ear straining or worry can change that.
A life spent on edge.
Which is what they want. It distracts you from seeing what they're doing. If it ends, if we are to end, it will arrive in its own time.
We have no say in it, in the end.
And in the end, none of it matters.
If indeed there's an end.
Of course there's an end. There has to be. Even the stars, burnt out suns lingering, like us, slowly dissipating.
Better than dissolving or disintegrating or...
Only the dark is eternal. Somebody give me the eyeglass? Come on, stop hogging it. Penfredo.
I suppose we could agree it saves money on the optician.
Ophthalmologists would call it a false economy.
Of course they would. Raking it in, we share the same genes, ergo, same eyesight.
Or lack of it. Let me put the contraption on. Oh, that's a sight for very sore eyes.
What?
You're looking rather peaky. But then you've always been drab.
I'll have you know I'm known for my appearance. I've been called fair-cheeked with a swan neck.
No, swan-shaped, wasn't it? It's either the spondylitis or the fact she's bottom-heavy. All hip, Pope's nose, and ugly webbed feet going like clappers, while she sails along, trying to rise above it all.
Like scum on the surface of water.
Pondweed.
In fairness, she was once described as saffron robed.
Maybe it was a nice sandy outfit. Cruise wear.
But that's still not enough to base her being a beauty on.
Because, of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that's one thing we're lacking.
I've told you before, we do not think in terms of deficit. And you were doing so well too, trying so very nicely in your solo to reframe your internalized ableism.
Oh, what? No, I was just guffing, sermonizing.
Enjoying the sound of your own voice.
Well, I so rarely get the chance with you two.
But at least you get mentioned and barely a reference. The also ran, that's me.
So you're bringing that up, are you?
What?
Why our names are known?
No, I'm just saying that I'm usually overlooked. They talk of two sisters.
You'll never let us forget it, will you?
Never forgive. We're always to blame.
There is no blame. It's understandable. Anyone would have done the same in that position. You were held to ransom.
We were all held to ransom, and there's strength in numbers, except some of us folded, one more than the other, bringing down the whole house of cards.
I hate it when you speak in cliches.
Better than being one.
Stop it. Stop squabbling. You're undermining our USP, what we epitomize. Unity, interdependence, cooperation. We would have all been left behind, helpless, together in the dark, if we hadn't...
It wasn't you. Stop trying to share the blame.
There is no blame.
And does it matter now anyway? Why do we always have to go over it? The mistakes we made when younger?
We were never younger.
I am ageless.
With your dyed hair, old woman.
My preference, if we have to call ourselves anything, is elder.
Such a soft, liberal term. So respectful of crumbling people with no backbone, just desiccating in their kindness.
Like flaked coconut.
Speak for yourself. I'm lovely and moist.
Must you?
Collagened up, oiled, and lubricated.
You'd put anyone off.
And you've been indoctrinated. Like we still don't have desire or sensuality or dreams over 45.
75, maybe.
You gotta use it or lose it. Facial yoga, lymphatic drainage. I will do everything in my power to reflect externally the youth and vitality I feel inside.
Only because you've been brainwashed by the cosmetic industry. Oh, hideous age! They don't like wrinkles and failing parts because memento mori. But we will. That's one thing we can be sure of.
Can we?
We will fail, weaken, and die.
Really?
But with time and age comes compensation, wisdom.
She found the keys to the drinks cabinet again.
And are we actually going to die? So, you would take this pen or a teaspoon or some such and wrap your lips around your teeth. Then you grip the pen or spoon or whatever with your mouth, but not the teeth. Don't hold it with your teeth. That is essential.
And then you manipulate this instrument up and down, side to side, and this
Will reduce turkey neck. That crappiness that suddenly appears almost overnight. And another is to pucker your lips and balance your pen, or
Teaspoon or some such.
yes, thank you. Balance this above your lips like a mustache. Thank you.
So in the end, and to conclude, I'm determined to celebrate getting older, not try to stay eternally young.
We were never young. We were born old.
But that's not an excuse to let yourselves go. We should embrace vigor, aspire to youthfulness. It is so much more attractive.
And that is what we're up against.
The wall with a bullet to put us out of our doting misery.
But she's got a point. Why do we see age as the end, not a place ripe with growth and possibilities? I'm not going to be quiet and diminish. I'm going to burn and crackle and roar!
I intend to inconvenience them. Speak up and louder when my words are ignored or spoken over. Break into a Broadway dame and project! Play the spoons on my bony vertebrae if need be. But to be visible, force my image on their reluctant retina.
I want to sit wide-legged
Yes.
and kick their colonizing sigh out of my designated seating area. What do you think you've got down there? A garden shed of tools?
Not that we've ever traveled by public transport.
Not that we could even get on.
Not that it's even designed with the likes of us in mind.
The afternoon of human life must also have a significance of its own. Jung said that.
Like name, like nature.
Afternoon. Such euphemism.
Such optimism. Middle age starts at 50 rather than 35, which is really probably the middle of life.
don't be so mathematical.
And depressing, in truth.
Precise is the word. Precision. Afternoon, indeed. So there's no song at evening, no fall of light, no midnight.
Most die and most are born in the small hours, the liminal space between dark and light.
3 a.m., the hellish time.
The waiting.
The longing.
Well, the fact of the matter is, if I may extrapolate, I know it's not my turn, but yours is already over, and so technically we're in freestyle.
The little distinctions we make to mop up time. You already have the eye and the tooth. Floor's yours.
Title.
Pondering on periods and purpose.
Alliteration, nice.
Pondering on periods and purpose. They don't know what to do with all these old dolls that have survived beyond the menstruating years. It used to be rare to live into menopause. Now, instead of seeing that time as a gift, useful, freed from the pains and inconvenience of monthly bloodletting and the threat of pregnancy, they want to invisible us away. There's something transgressive about being of use beyond housing their precious sperm, spawning their offspring, being useful and happy and independent, outlasting the fertile years.
Only.
To be of use. Used. Useful.
And apparently, there are efforts to prolong fertility, as though that's our only raison d'etre, our only function to sprog.
Such a satisfying word. Sprog.
So, we didn't bear fruit. So what?
Sprog.
Does that make our existence less valuable?
Sprog.
The menses. 1/3 of a life bleeding, the first decade preparing for it, and then, after, left on the slag heap. No longer with a woman's function, and yet not quite a man. What a miserable place to be put, endlessly medicalized. It's natural, not a sickness, a temporary process by which we are shaped into something not new but extra, something else, added to, not this endless subtraction. Or so it would be if we could but see our purpose is more than begetting. Thank you.
For them, perhaps.
What?
Purpose being more than begetting. For them, the ones next door, not us. We were never of childbearing age. We were never green and then ripe and then rotting. We've always been, what's the word? Any of you?
Preserved.
Yes.
Freeze-dried?
Lyopolized.
Oh.
I know. Fantastic, isn't it?
We were never young. We were never fertile.
Fecund. Don't you love the lascivious rudeness of the word? Cunt.
That won't go down well.
What?
They won't like that.
Or any of this.
But we don't know for sure that they listen.
Oh, of course they listen.
How?
The space is listening. They'll listen, and they might not like that, any of this.
But why would they be interested in me?
In us.
What was that? Shh. Listen.
The dead gathered snugly in corners, rustling their non-breath.
They'll never forgive me, will they? And you won't either, will you? Will you?
Blackout.
Two, unlit or a different state.
And throughout it all, they existed, eavesdroppers on history.
Sometimes they spoke of it, using the collective second person.
Remember when it rains, it fell so hard on you, you almost drowned?
But never voicing the cattle trucks with its human cargo headed to the end of the tracks.
Or the genocide transmitted in real time live onto tablets and screens and other electronic devices.
Or the insults gleefully painted on bombs that flattened cities, turning populations to dust.
Or the hospitals targeted, the relief aid stalled, the children starving in euphemistically termed collection camps.
They never spoke of these, as they never saw them.
They were always in an adjacent room, listening through the walls to the house being ransacked, second-guessing what was happening.
Or was that just Foley, sound effects, to deceive? Hard to know what to believe.
Hard to know who or what to trust.
They were not even witness to life, but eavesdroppers, unable to discern what may be true. So many versions flew around those days.
Propaganda.
Fairy stories.
Lies.
Entertainment.
Or at least that was what they said. That was what they told themselves. That was their excuse.
A reset, although time has passed. There has been a disintegration in their clothing and access devices.
Lights up. Here she comes with her magpie feathers, pebbles and shells, an act of bricolage, putting herself together with detritus.
I'm growing new bones.
Old Dano,
Known as the Dreadful.
in ill-fitting acrylic cardigan and moth-eaten tweed skirt. Old lady's clothes.
Not her own.
Wheels herself into the light.
Old Pimfredo.
AKA the alarming.
Following. Gnarly hands grasping the wheelchair handles for balance. Hobbling on shoes with a broken heel.
They were designer, too good for the rubbish heap.
Clothed quite demurely.
Well, for her.
A tight-fitting body condress.
Masked by an enveloping cape.
A little peekaboo. Now you see it. Now you don't. Old Ennio
Called the appalling.
hovers uncertainly, clothed like a jumble sail, chaotic in mismatched patterns, a bewildering melange.
It's a deliberate style choice.
Migraine-inducing for the sighted.
It's political. Rejecting the tyranny of throwaway fashion and through recycling and repurposing, cutting back on waste and consumerism.
Oh, they won't like that.
They definitely won't like that. She hovers uncertainly,
You already said that, but keep talking. I'm following your voice.
wielding a broken white cane, bent at a right angle, quite useless.
I'm expecting a new one any moment.
Same for the battery on my power wheelchair.
It's just all so expensive these days.
A white stick.
A retractable white stick. Well, that was novel. A new entrance. What happened to your Zimmer frame?
Wheel came off. It's a little nut or bolt waiting for it.
Like the glue to fix your heel.
Market forces, supply and demand, They'll get around to us eventually.
When they've served everybody else next door.
Yes, so...
Don't you hate being the last in the queue, even though you were there before everybody else? We've joined the "they're disabled so they don't matter" gang. The overlooked, the not so important. I'm a vampire with no reflection in the mirror.
Hopefully she'll get to the point eventually, even though it's actually not her turn.
We don't have jobs to rush off to, or children to bathe, or big burly husbands to feed, so we're invisible and apparently mute. Nobody hears us.
I know the feeling.
Apparently, unprocessed anger makes us sick. There's a link between suppressed rage and autoimmune disease. So go on, vent. It's probably as beneficial as doing a cardio workout.
Although it's someone else's turn to speak.
And then when we finally do manage to attract attention, we're made to feel greedy or selfish simply for asking for the same treatment as everyone else.
I have the contraption.
I'd love to have a klaxon or a megaphone or a blunderbuss or a bazooka, and I just
Personally, I don't mind waiting, even though I've got the eyeglass and therefore it's my turn. I'm patient. I have manners. I try to be fair. I show respect. I'm not pushy, unlike some.
That's right. Don't bottle it up and give yourself cancer.
I suffer enough already with you. You two are like a terrible disease, except there's no cure. And as there's potentially no death for us, no escape from the constant chattering. And you don't play fair. You don't respect the agreements we made, the rituals, the little adjustments to enable us to cohabit in this eternal living hell. No, you just crash in, spouting your unfiltered dross, a feeling that positions you always as a victim. Hard done by. I'm tired of it. I hate it.
Well, that certainly cleared out the tubes. Better out than in, shall we say?
Lordy, you're waspish today.
Like name, like nature. Some call their daughters Grace and Hope or Willow, Rose, something that expresses tenderness, aspiration. But I get named after a stinging insect that does no good and is mean? Doesn't even make honey? There's no consolation for the sting.
But Freddie, you buzz so delightfully.
Oh, thank you.
And your sudden little attacks keep us from being complacent. It's like a very useful fire drill. We never know when you're going to strike.
I wonder, when he passed after the slaughter, did he carry her head in a box or by her hair so all could see her mortality, her shame, his triumph over her life?
And what's in a name, anyway? They can't even decide what to call us, or what our names mean. Warlike, the dreadful, horrific.
The terrible one?
Anything so long as it's ugly and loathsome and frightening, and we're stuck with it.
Are we?
Just because we're named something doesn't mean we have to keep it.
It's a little late in the day to start changing names now, don't you think?
Not if we're going on beyond the foreseeable future.
Which is a possibility. Our parents were supposed to be immortal, weren't they?
No child believes their parents can die.
But we've never been children. I can't remember being other than I am now.
And perhaps it will continue so.
So, I'm going to rename myself. I'm going to redefine what it means. How I'm described.
Yes, it's just ableist ageism having a field day. Who said we had to honor it?
We never said we're ugly or fearful or horrific.
No. So why have we taken their word for it? Give me the contraption, Freddie, and come closer. I want to have a good, hard look at you.
Why haven't we done this before? Why have we just accepted?
Because that's what we're taught to do, isn't it? It's what we've been taught. Don't make a fuss. Never question their word. Take it for truth. They name something and it is so.
Dano inserts the eyeglass and studies Penfredo, who poses hopefully.
Well, and?
I think you're what the French would call jolie laide.
Ooh, sounds sophisticated. What does it mean?
That you're pretty ugly.
No, well, yes, in literal translation, but the definition is generally accepted as an unconventional beauty.
Oh, whatever.
But it's still better than the moniker you had before, isn't it?
I'm reclaiming hag. Maybe crone.
I can't wait for my tusks to grow in.
I had a dream of shed snakeskin, serpent energy, death and rebirth. I'm sorry if I snapped earlier. I'm tired. I need a change.
Cleopatra of Alexandria, one of our early female alchemists from 3/4 of a century BCE, she said to change we need mortification. To face the dead parts, its ashes, releasing so much of what we believe to be important and true, acknowledging it might not matter at all as we age.
Like beauty and how we look, perhaps?
Leave it.
Does that resonate with you?
Get her in contact with frequencies and vibration.
I'll have you know the universe hums in B flat.
I feel like I'm being reduced to bone by burning.
Calcination, the shedding before transformation.
No. Hot flashes.
It's the same thing.
Let's do it properly. Give me the contraption. Does it anger you that such an elemental, atomic sensation is made trivial? Bless. That time of life, is it, pet? You having a hottie? No, I'm thermonuclear, incandescent, lit and kindled from within. A volcano.
Yes.
The eyeglass is past.
I was born a hag. My body a crucible, the burning vessel where alchemy begins. I'm converting, transmuting.
The eyeglass is past.
I'm a story that's never been told. The crone, the witch, the weird sister living on the edge. What brought me to this? What of my dreams and inner life? There are too many women's stories that no one will know.
The eye is past.
We're smelted in the internal crucible, molted for a while without shape or definition, but in time.
Transubstantiated.
Yes, if we would but believe it. But we are taught to quietly leave the stage, move out of the picture, make room for those coming through. Our opposites don't. They become dignified authorities, wise counselors. Why are we so undervalued?
Or objects of disgust.
Is it something in nature?
No, it's man-made. I mean, it doesn't happen to orcas, and they're the only other mammal known to experience menopause. I'm not a specialist, and I can't be sure, but I suspect their sonar song is not calling their female elders ugly, dried up, shriveled cunts. But what I do know is they're not ostracized within their pods. Instead, postmenopausal orcas take on leadership roles and even, apparently, initiate the young males in sexual technique.
Oh, to be a whale.
To be touched.
To have experienced love.
And by that, I'm assuming you mean sexual intercourse?
Bashing the bishop. Bumping uglies.
Yes, thank you, Ennio, we get it.
Squat thrusting in the cucumber patch.
Very visual.
I love this one. Taking old one eye to the optometrist. So appropriate for us.
Not if we're gay. Have you finished?
Yeah.
So by love, I'm assuming you mean all of the aforementioned conjugal rights?
Burping the worm in the mole hole. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one.
Do you have to be so coarse?
Yeah, it adds texture. Okay, I'm finished.
Because, Freddie, you have experienced love. You are loved. You are our beloved. And maybe we don't affirm it enough. Say how we feel it's such a struggle sometimes doing the simplest thing, relying on each other to accomplish the tiniest task, which always takes so long. Codependency, it breeds contempt.
And impatience. We forget to treat each other well.
Which isn't helped by the boredom. How to fill so many hours, potentially without end. Time yawning out over the years, decades, pulling us thinner and thinner.
So let us live big and generously, and if we are mortal, let's die epic, not tidied away like some crumbs of stale bread on the cutting board.
There is nothing old or stale about me.
No.
Rather mellowed, matured, fortified.
Like a nice glass of sherry.
Port.
I want to escape the narrative, the long ingrained stories which aren't true, just told by the ones who benefit, who destroyed all traces of our female deities and matriarchal societies.
Erasing the achievements.
The queendoms.
Our ancient boards. I'm Sheila Nagig with her drooping breasts, right hand spread, exposing the lips of the vulva.
I'm Bobo, lifting her skirts to shock the grief-stricken Demeter back into life through sudden laughter.
They made our bodies dirty, impure, to make us small, to take up less room, to be grateful and immobile, except to clean, cook, bear the children, bear it all.
Solemnly, Pimfredo takes the vision glass.
In one of the holy books, back when there's still books and belief in the sacred, an angel cuts out the prophet's heart to wash it clean. I used to long for my heart to be sluiced clean in water, packed in snow, washed with rain, to be pure. A state I was taught I had never been, for I was dirt. I was dirty. My body and its functions monstrous. That's how they control us. They control us with shame.
They make us dragons to justify their slaying of us.
But never before in recorded history have so many educated, liberated women without children been alive at the same time. Well, if that's not an opportunity, I don't know what is.
But that's why perhaps they have to crush us. Silence as they absorb this. Blackout.
green, unlit, or a different state.
And throughout it all, they listened in darkness.
Whilst in another country, the girls whose mothers had walked to their university classes in short skirts, hair flowing, were denied education beyond the age of 10.
The same land where female song was forbidden, even a lullaby.
Where the voice of any woman was not allowed to be heard on the street or even from within the home.
And in another place, self-proclaimed civilized and developed, a woman was imprisoned for having a miscarriage.
The same state where the medical profession insisted on a male partner's permission before a woman's tubes could be tied.
A land which sought ways to remove the ballot and erase the right to vote.
Where the clock was set back 100 years and described as progress.
But they didn't worry too much about all this, for that was elsewhere, and things like that would never happen where they were.
It would never happen to them.
Or that was what they told themselves. That was what they said. That was what they hoped.
End of extract.
We have a little Q&A, so I know that, yes, shall we?
Yeah.
Put some chairs up.
Hi, everyone. I don't know, is this on? Can you hear me? So we're going to have a Q&A start with Kate. Kate has to leave early and fly back to the UK tonight. So we're going to start talking with Kate, and then we're going to bring in some more artists and continue the conversation. So there might be a little clunkiness transitioning, but bear with us.
Maybe next week.
Sure. Oops. Is this? Yes. Well, thank you all. Thank you all so much. Kate, Bree, Melissa, Katie, thank you so much. We don't have that much time, so I just want to ask a few questions, and then I actually would really want to encourage people to ask questions. I have to say I have many of my students from NYU here, so I'm very excited that they're here. They read your Richard III Redux, and they're very excited about that. So I just want to start first with just asking what it is like to sort of present this early work here in the US to US audiences at this moment.
Really important.
Okay. Can you talk about why?
Yeah. First of all, loads of my friends, because it's raw. I know that I've got a reputation for writing good first drafts or good rough drafts. But most of my friends were going like, you are crazy, so raw, so new, putting it out in front of people. I'm going, this is a fabulous opportunity. And never mind the wonderful experience I've had working with the cast. To talk about this at this time on this land is so important. And, you know, it's the same in the UK. The piece is coming out of the way our rights are being rolled back, the way everything that had been fought for and gained in the past, from disability rights in the UK to kind of reproductive rights, to women's rights, to gay rights, to trans rights, to every rights, is being wheeled back both in the UK and the US. So this is raw and this is fresh, because I went, I've got to write this now. And to have the opportunity of just being here with you guys, here, talking about this, and going, you know, I'm an ally. I see you. I know what struggles we're going to have ahead of us. But this is the time that we've got to speak out. Because if it's hard to speak out now, imagine how it's going to be later. So that it really, you know, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to be here, but it's, I call myself a cultural activist, this old term we used in the 80s. And it used to be a bit, oh, you're a cultural activist. Now actually it's pertinent again. And I feel really proud to be able to maybe, through my work or talking with people and sharing things with people, just to be reflecting and commenting on what is happening this minute.
Why did you choose the mythological, the structure of the myth as a way to go about it? Why did that speak to this moment?
The grey eye, I first originally started getting an idea about doing something with the Grey Eye Sisters when I was writer-in-residence at Atelier Samuel Beckett in France. I was the first writer-in-residence back in October, November. And I hadn't written for 5 years for live theatre because I hadn't known what stories we needed to hear. And then I started going, well, you know, because I started seeing constant backlash against my community, you know, the disabled community. We had Labour coming in and we thought, great, we're gonna change, we're gonna be all right after these awful Tories and what they've been doing, and Labour are even worse than they were, demonising disabled people. You know, the whole issues also around trans, all these things. And I went back going, the Grey Eye Sisters with the idea, it's often been used as a metaphor, as a representation of my community, the disabled community. Because it's about codependence, it's about the fact we do things in different ways, that we rely on each other, we share things, and maybe, and I think it could be happening now, Perseus is going to come along and leave us again in perpetual darkness. So it seems really apt, both as a woman identifying person, but also as a crip.
Do other people involved in the reading sort of, want to speak to some of these ideas? And this is not working. Oh, there we go. To speak to just what Kate's talking about in terms of working with this material in this moment. Maybe you could start.
I'm really excited to be working on this material in this moment. It seems it seems serendipitous to have this opportunity at this time to be able to work on something that is both so just artistically beautiful, just in and of itself, the story itself, the way the relationships between these sisters are, that is fulfilling in and of itself, but then to really feel those moments that Kate has written, and especially in scene 3, that she really speaks directly to what's happening to us right now as American citizens, disabled or not, trans or not, right? Any and all of us are now very much in grave danger of being disappeared at any time for saying words like accessible or equity. And I think that
and woman.
And oh gosh, yeah, don't say that. Yeah, so I feel like just to echo Kate's sentiments, this is the time. This is the time.
Yeah, I also relate. I personally have a neurological disability. I'm on the autism spectrum. I'm also non-binary, and I'm also queer. And in the state that we're living in right now, this is probably the first time where I feel as though that I have a target painted on my back. Mm-hmm. And it makes me question, do I feel safe here? Am I gonna be targeted just for existing? And it also makes me wonder why suddenly, after all the years of progress that we have made, why have we come back to the dark ages? I'm trying to rack that through my brain. And maybe it's because the powers that be are just tired of being seen as, the afterthought, because That wasn't the case in the past, where the people in power were those who are white, cisgender, and male. And suddenly there's more of us coming into light, you know, being out there, being openly female, being openly BIPOC, being openly disabled. Because, you know, through the years that we've progressed, we're now more open, and also we're also gender fluid, only to come down to this, what we're experiencing right now. But I'm glad that, Katie, you brought this show here and, you know, express what you need to express to this show. I think we're grateful. And I mean, I would speak on behalf of everybody, the cast included, saying that, yeah, thank you so much for bringing this show to light, even though it's a work in progress. So I respect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bree, did you want to share your experience working on the text?
I'll try to be quick because I know you probably want to take audience questions as well. Let's see. I am disabled from birth. I have cerebral palsy, and I'm fairly newly trans, about 2 years. So I had one target on my back, and then I painted a bigger target outside of it on my back. I also had not acted before this in 21 years. That part of my life was over, it was past, it was not to be visited again. And I saw this on Facebook, and they were looking for someone who was femme or femme presenting, who was disabled and who was over 40, and I thought, well, okay. And I'd known Kate's work as a dramaturg for years, but I didn't know she was a playwright. And then I wrote this letter, and I thought, I'll never hear about this again. And then when they said yes, I thought, I can't do this. And the minute I got this script, I'm like, yep, this is one of the 5 best scripts I've read in 10 years. The script is so good. I can't emphasize how much the language just takes you, how much the language allows you to express, that it's your words that make all this possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe we could take a few questions, and that'll sort of be a good transition into our larger panel discussion we're going to have. So does anyone, I can't really see that well, does anyone have a question they'd like to ask?
Just to say thank you. It was marvelous script. And also, when do you think it's going to be finalized? When can we see a whole finalized piece? Because it's so important. It's really important.
Thank you for that question. I finished the rough draft the day before I flew out here. I flew out here on Monday, and I'm catching the red eye. I'm having to slip out just around 7 o'clock to go to the airport. I don't know, because I only completed the rough draft on Sunday. I will maybe look at it, polish it up a bit, and then start maybe trying to get it out or get other people to read it. But you know, it's I would love it to be produced, but because it's so, I mean, I've never done, it's only the rough draft. I finished on Sunday, and here we are sharing it. I mean, it's kind of fabulous, but really fast tracked. So I haven't really caught up with it yet. But it's not a commission. It's something that I started writing myself, and because I felt this was a story that needed to be told. I usually write to commission. So it's available, anybody out there. But thank you for your question.
I was just curious, could you, from your perspective, it's Kate, yes? Can you talk a little bit about what you perceive as the difference between the scene in the UK and the scene here, and how that does or does not manifest in terms of community?
It depends what scene you mean.
I guess I would say like the disability art scene in particular, maybe theater specifically. I'm just curious. Like one thing I've heard from a UK friend of mine is that we got rights and you got culture. Because
that's fabulous quote.
You know,
wow.
Because your equivalent of our ADA, American Disabilities Act, was 10 plus years after, and that somehow led to the manifestation of a stronger sense of community. But I'm just curious, if at all, how you perceive those things.
I mean, thank you. I don't know the scene in the US well enough. I know more kind of disability studies, CRIP studies. I know more academically than I do within, kind of performance. I'm part of an international community. I mean, it was thanks to my friends. I've got some CRIP friends here in the US who were able to get the word out, that managed to bring this wonderful cast to us. So I do feel like I'm part of a wider community. Yes, for many years the UK was seen as a beacon because we had such a focus. I'm a veteran of the disabled people's political movement, and therefore also one of the pioneers of disability arts and culture and within the UK. And in lots of ways people were going, oh, you're so ahead and you're so ahead of us, and what we were doing with the aesthetics of access, etc., etc. Lots of people saying you're way, way ahead. I think that's been eroded. I think, crazily enough, a lot of places in the UK were able to use inclusivity as a way of actually then pulling back on disability arts and culture and deaf culture. I would agree, I think the political rights here are stronger than in the UK because they still have these little loopholes called, reasonable adjustments. And so because of that in the UK, we're often stymied with with trying to really ensure that there is equity and we have rights. But I'm afraid I don't feel that I was, I know the situation in the US. I know from international festivals, but then we're usually in a place that is where none of us are living. And we come together in a disability festival. And I know from that it's a very strong culture, and I feel very strongly it's a community. But I'm afraid I don't know enough to be able to say anything terribly meaningful to you. But I really welcome your question. I wish I could give it a better answer than this.
If I may just throw in a little something regards to that.
Please do.
And I believe this is relevant in terms of theater and disability combined together in overseas, particularly the UK. I've heard that there's small theater groups developing in the UK, slowly but surely, thanks to Instagram. So there's one. Two, I hear that there's going to be a UK adaptation of the musical How to Dance in Ohio that's coming to the West End. So maybe that is a sign of progress. I mean, it's slowly coming in there. That's the best of my knowlge.
Oh, I can talk about the UK scene.
Of course.
I just can't talk about the US scene. Sure. The UK scene, we've been doing it a long time. I've been doing disability arts and culture for nearly 40 years. There's companies that have been established for 35, 40 years that are all disabled or deaf-led. And so, I mean, it's not just starting, it's established. And it's really mature cultural work and artistic work. But what is happening is we were beginning to kind of infiltrate, get there into the so-called mainstream. And then because of sort of certain ways of defining the word about being inclusive, those spaces started closing to many of us because it was maybe easier to work with other groups and still be able to say, this is diversity, than, hey, you've got to rethink your building because it's completely physically inaccessible. But I just want to clarify that. We have got mature companies that are 30, 40 years longer, you know, and running and winning Olivier Awards and doing, you know, world-class work with really established artists. And there are more, you know, kind of artists coming through that are finding new expression and new ways forward. And it's not just like the old guard, like I am. I'm part of that kind of old guard. But it's just the US I can't really comment on.
I think actually that, I want to take one more question, but I think actually the panel discussion that you're going to be part of that follows this will also help illuminate what's going on in the US, particularly the sort of New York kind of area. So we would, you know, that'll be a great way to segue into it. One more question, and then we're actually going to make the shift. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Question just for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
As I love the people sitting next to me, but I don't think anything really matters until we take control of the means of production. Period. And I myself have written articles about trying to get folks into positions of systemic power. Why are there no major ADs who have visible disabilities in the UK or in the US? Why aren't there people on literary staffs? Why aren't there, et cetera, et cetera? Until we do that, the rest of it is a gift being given us temporarily, right? From people who can always revoke it.
I do think we have quite a few artistic directors who are deaf or disabled,
okay.
and it's been disabled and
Okay.
deaf-led for 30 or 40
well,
years.
Where we are, we don't have anyone. There is no senior staff member with a visible disability in any major regional theater, nor has there ever been since the beginning of the American regional theater movement. Yeah.
Very good point.
Okay, one more question.
Thank you for this new work, Kate. It was really exciting to hear. I was hoping you could talk about triads of women. I mean, it seems very pertinent to this work in Grey Eye as kind of the basis for the story, but kind of across your many works, it seems like 3 women coming together feels ripe for not just conversations about approaches to feminism, but also conversations about disability and kind of the multiplicity of representations that you can have in 3. Yeah, I was just wondering if you could say more on that.
Yeah, I mean, 3 is the magical number. I love 3. It's always got to be, you know, it's 3 or 5. I mean, it just the dynamic and what it allows us with power play, with ganging up on each other, with making alliances, with endlessly creating new, fresh dynamics and power play between 3. I'm also very influenced by the fact that, you know, there have been, mythologically as well, we have the Gorgon sisters, the 3, the Furies and the Fates, and, you know, there is something about this triad, this trio of women that I think is really, really rich. And what it also allows us with 3, and I've done it quite a lot in my work, is it enables me to, for example, work with somebody who is neurodivergent, somebody who has physical or sensory impairment, and somebody also who's deaf culturally. And so that in itself, just even in 3, we've got this incredible richness of culture and lived experience that can be in an affordable cast. Because that's the other thing, isn't it? You know, we have to think about that. I'd love to write, you know, a huge piece, but no, it's like 3 if I'm lucky. That's the most. But I think it's both the influence of kind of mythology and just the extraordinary opportunity that dynamic offers us between alliances and ganging up on each other and having different perspectives, but also having very, very different embodied experiences on stage. So thank you for that question.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we'll use the next couple of minutes just to transform the space a little bit so we can bring in the full panel, so just be patient with us. And then we'll get started. Thanks.
How are you feeling?
Thank you so much. All the best.
Let's go.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. Oh yeah, but let's stay in touch.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Kate. Are you on the internet, social media?
I certainly am. I better just switch this off for a minute. But I've got emails. Absolutely. Darling, I'm just
That's right. We just follow. Should I give this to?
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, that's right. Okay.
It's untried. And so that I think it's great.
That's okay. Yes, this should be fine. How much do you know?
I mean, I switched it on at the moment, but I'll switch it on.
I just want to
and then it's fine. It's fine. Is that okay?
Just something.
I have Hi.
Okay, everyone, welcome back for part 2. This is an event. I just want to honor the fact that HowlRound is streaming live this event, as it does with most of our events, and which definitely broadens our audience to an international level as well as in the U.S. and they're captioning the event to try to make it as accessible as possible to people. So I just want to thank them for that. So this conversation is actually addressing a question that Greg had brought up earlier on about this kind of scene of what the disability arts and particularly disability and performance scene is in New York at this time. So that's where we're going to go with this. But before I do that, I want to introduce everyone that's on the panel. We have people coming from lots of different spaces within the performance world in New York and a little beyond. So, sorry, let me start. So, to my left, I have Alyssa Kit Hanley, who is an independent artist in the burlesque scene, and also a graduate student here, PhD candidate, yes. Yes, can we applause that? We have Greg Mozgala, who is a director, actor, and artistic director of the Apothete Theater. And are you currently in residence at the Public? Is that right? Very exciting. We have Margaret Hall and Jessica Vanek, both from the Autistic Theater Makers Alliance. So thank you. Kayla Hamilton, who is the founder and artistic director of Circle O. Thank you. Katie Butler, who is, we all have seen from our previous event, is a director currently teaching at Carnegie Mellon. Is that right? Thank you. Garrett Zerker is a playwright, actor, and director, and the founding artistic director of Deaf Broadway. And the wonderful Kate O'Reilly, playwright, 2005 World Voices Segal Center playwright. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you so much. So we'll actually start with a pretty broad question, but I'd like to put it out to everyone. What do you see the current landscape of theater in relationship to disability and deaf performance being in, I would say the US, if you've been working outside of the city, but particularly in the wake of the COVID crisis and then the particular political landscape that we're in right now? What is this moment that we're in? And then maybe once we can find that moment, we can move from there and then be a little bit more specific about our experiences. So does anyone want to start? It's a big question, but no.
Getting the mic turned on. So this is a really interesting time for autistic theater makers in this country right now. As some of you may be aware, we currently have a man in power who is very much enfranchised in wanting us to not exist and pretty much claiming that we are not capable of anything and that our lives are worthless, is functionally what RFK's platform boils down to. And there's a lot of fear surrounding it. There's a lot of anxiety and a lot of quote unquote going back in the neurodivergent closet that's been happening. But I also have a lot of hope. Just last year, we had some huge strides in terms of public autistic theater making in this country and in this city specifically. A musical called How to Dance in Ohio made its debut on Broadway, which had autistic actors playing autistic characters for the very first time. This was a huge landmark moment for the commercial theater in this country. The show is now being performed internationally. It has been licensed for regionals. We will see where things go based on legislation, but based on the conversations we have had with our community, the conversations we have had with our grantees and those that follow our work, those that are finding bravery within themselves to be public about their neurodivergent status are finding community with one another, and that is breeding significant creativity.
Someone else want to chime in? Anyone else? Greg, I'm going to put you on the spot since you had asked the question to Kate earlier.
Sure. My biggest concern at the moment, there are several, but a lot of the funding structures have changed. Somebody shared with me an article by Helen Shaw, who's a fantastic journalist in the cultural sector. She writes primarily about theater, but she had an article in the New Yorker about the changing scene from the philanthropic community. A lot of funders have either pulled their support or started to change where their priorities are going to be in terms of funding. And while they say that they're still going to fund the arts, Two huge funders, which are the Mellon Foundation and the Ford Foundation, have greatly reduced their funding to a lot of the cultural institutions here in New York. And there's a lot of argument about whether that funding was previously, what's that expression? An inch wide, but a mile deep, but an inch wide, right? So the claim is that they're trying to diversify, and that, which by meaning only a few institutions, predominantly large institutions, were getting the bulk of that funding. So they say they're trying to diversify. But that is the lifeblood of how everything is done. With most of the theaters being nonprofit, any kind of startup or small company, right? So it's being whatever worked for the last 15 or 20 years, I think there's been a big kind of seismic shift, and it's about getting kind of inventive or investigative about how now to secure funds to do the work that needs to be done, which may make it less likely for other companies to take risks on work that has to do with deafness or disability, which is, I think, perceived as a major giant risk anyway, and takes a lot of money inherently. So it's just it's a really interesting, tricky point. Not without opportunity, but I just think the rules that were are a changing. So that'd be my take on it.
I think so much changed, absolutely so much changed and accelerated in terms of technology, in terms of the entire world becoming aware of sickness and health. And it changed our structures of space and performance and the nature of public and private. People who could perform in certain spaces, who had access to perform in certain spaces, suddenly were on a similar field of digital performance. And that also allowed us, when we came back to physical spaces of the of traditional stage, where we're thinking about these care structures more. Like, how are our chronically ill people who are also suffering from chronic illness or different mobility issues, like, how are they performing with us now, and who is left behind? And I think that those are only becoming more evident once more. Is like people who were coming to our knowledge through these digital performances are slowly being disappeared again.
Do people have any other shared experience in the idea of maybe how in the post-COVID era, maybe there's a sense of community that grew in the wake of that? Does anyone want to speak to that experience? Garrett?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. It's interesting because COVID was clearly a terrible time. However, we today have Deaf Broadway, which is the company that I work with. We would not have had that idea even if not for COVID. Because in early days, all of the deaf actors who were sitting at home doing nothing, we decided, hey, why don't we just put on a show on Zoom for ourselves? Wouldn't that be fun? So we just sat on Zoom and we did a little show together for literally for fun. And when we realized that working together in one big room was so invigorating, we were learning so many things from each other. And these were deaf people from all over the United States, not because everyone was stuck at home in all their little areas. So we were able to connect and create a community. And this was a thing that helped us all come together and work with other deaf professionals in a way that we don't usually. And it was a beautiful thing. And we thought once COVID was over, when COVID was over, right? But we thought that Deaf Broadway would sort of fade away as a moment of what it was. And then we were reached out to by Lincoln Center to put on a performance, and it's taken off from there. And so if anything, COVID helped the deaf theater community become stronger in a way. And I have very mixed feelings about that, because of course it was a very terrible and traumatic experience, but we did gain one big positive from it.
Jessica, did you?
Hi. Yeah, so as far as building community post-COVID, I'm actually from the graduating class of 2021, meaning that I graduated and was, it wasn't fully open yet. My showcase was online. I was a music theater major. But I figured out in that time of the people who had to finish college during COVID we're quite a resilient and passionate bunch, the 20s. So I think it was cool finding community, like Garrett was saying, through, it was, something that hurt us all and was very difficult, but the people who we needed, specifically the autistic community or neurodivergent, really found each other and held each other together. And I think that was, definitely a good way to.
The other thing that I also think is just worth speaking to, for our perspective, a lot of people were diagnosed as autistic during the pandemic because it was the first experience in their lives where they were separated from allistic people and able to fully drop the mask. And they were able to get to know themselves, not as who they were performing for other people. And so there has been a huge influx of people from every age range. People tend to think that it's sort of people that are in the young adult category. I know people as old as 98 who figured this out about themselves. And it's been this fascinating sea change of people developing language to communicate with each other rather than isolating themselves and feeling like there was something wrong with themselves. And so that has been a really major change because autistic people have been involved in theater making since the dawn of time. We've always been around. Yeah, we just got labeled as quirky or different or methodical. There's many different words that you can see applied to people. But now we are finding the language to connect with one another, which is what I think is actually causing a lot of the backlash we're seeing right now, because there is power in us being united and not siloing.
Gary, go ahead. If I could just add something quickly, going back to what you said about your experience graduating during COVID. I started grad school in fall of 2020. And I applied, in 2019. It wasn't like a COVID pivot. I had no idea this was going to happen, but I applied and I started, and then COVID happened. And before COVID, I was very nervous because I was the only deaf person in my program. In a hearing cohort, it is generally very easy for a deaf person to get lost in a hearing program like that. So when we moved to a full online Zoom experience, it was a 2-year program, and the first 3 semesters were completely online. So on Zoom, it was a bit of a blessing because you can't talk over people. The sound won't let you do it. And I had access to the chat. So I felt that I could participate much more than I normally would in a physical classroom. In person, hearing people will talk over each other, conversation moves very quickly, and I get behind, I get lost. Zoom was a lot more equitable of an experience for me. And then at the beginning of the semester, I said, do you mind when we're speaking if we all raise hands so that we have decent turn taking? That will help the interpreters, it will help me participate. And there were only 5 of us. It was quite a small cohort. And everyone was very obliging. Again, they had no experience working with deaf folks, but they agreed that they felt more included and they felt that they were able to participate more because they learned not to interrupt and crosstalk, because hearing people love to interrupt, you love to interrupt each other. But they felt that we were all able to bond more solidly as a result of this accommodation for me, and it ended up being a mutual gain.
Greg, did you want to say something?
I may articulate this poorly, so just forgive me as I'm working this out. But there's an interesting phenomenon that's happening even on this panel that I think is indicative of the larger networks of deaf disabled communities too. It's like again, we're talking about deaf theater specifically. We're talking about autistic theater specifically. There are all these subsets, right, where people are working. I don't mean this in a pejorative negative way, but siloed in a way, right, within, and where is I think when we talk about community in terms of deafness and disability, you have to have to understand that it is a series of communities with a series of histories, right, that don't necessarily have cohesion or overlap. And I think that is one of the most difficult things to explore or even work with, right? When if you say I make work for disabled, you know, you have for deaf and disabled, right? You have to be, if you're worth it, you know, I mean, you have to take into consideration all aspects of that community, which is incredibly varied and complex. And I think it's very different from a cultural identity or an ethnic identity, right? Because disability is intersectional with all those other identities as well. So it's just been a question that I am always kind of grappling with, that I never have a satisfactory answer to, and maybe there won't be. I just want to continue to explore the question, right? But what does this community mean, and what does it mean to make art for, with, and by these communities? It's a very complicated issue. Which I think is different from an ethnic or cultural identity. Because it's rooted in the body, right? And instead of more often than not, right? And the context is not geography, right? Or specific location or cultural identity. The context is often illness, trauma, and pain, right? Which a lot of people don't want to deal with or face, right? So there's this. It becomes very tricky. I think the flip side of that is, you know, there's potentially great power in that. We do have the history of being performers, right, collectively in the freak show and being on display and all those things historically. But I think we've lost this sense somehow. And I think if anything, what theater does, regardless of who's making it, is make a space for community to gather, right? And so I think that at core, that's what you're trying to do. But I see my experience as an integrated experience. I'm the only disabled person in my family, often the only disabled person, you know, around. It's counterintuitive for me to be in this scenario. I never hang out with this many disabled people, right? And the only place where that has happened, and the only place I was quote unquote allowed to like work in this space for the longest of times, was because the more mainstream spaces, quote unquote, were not available to me, or closed off to me. So I was driven into this lane, which was counterintuitive to my experience, but has become my experience. And I think that's that's just a tricky navigation. And I think a lot of people don't understand. And I think something that we have to work to articulate. So, end of thought.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for everything that you have said so far. It's been really just wonderful to be here. I also operate primarily in abled spaces, so it's really kind of refreshing to be in a space like this. I teach at Carnegie Mellon University. I actually teach movement. I was trained as an able-bodied performer in Lecoq, and I became disabled in 2021. And so, you know, teaching at this really elite level, it's amazing, and I feel very privileged to be here. But you won't see a wheelchair user empty at CMU. Never have. Maybe never will, because they would have to completely restructure their program in order to accommodate that one student. And that is such a huge institutional thing to overcome. I don't have the answer. I don't posit anything. But only to say that the training matters too, and the representation in the training matters, and the visibility, and knowing we have these elite artists, these incredible, amazing folks that don't get the same shot because institutions aren't willing to provide the access. And it's a difficult thing that I'm only trying to figure it out, I guess, for myself as an educator in the space, and what it means for me and how I can teach movement while honoring the Lecoq pedagogy, but in a way that allows me to do it. Yeah.
And picking up on what Kaite was just saying, it's been the focus for quite a few decades in the UK about how to really bring meaningful change. And so some of these, I was talking earlier about, we've got, you know, well-established, mature artists, very confident in their practice, who come from disabled, deaf, or neurodivergent communities. And there have been all sorts of opportunities and experiments between companies, like, for example, Grey Eye Theatre Company, who've then also been doing courses or doing, kind of training with different drama schools to try and change things. Reading University used to, they don't anymore, but they had a wonderful course that was also for, using visual language and kind of deaf culture as part of a performance degree. And, the wonderful Ramesh Mayapan is doing that in Scotland at the Conservatoire, where as a wonderful performer, I've worked with him a lot, and an educator who's profoundly deaf, doesn't use voice, is actually really having an impact on the next generations coming through. And it's taken a very long time, just even for these few examples, because we've been trying this for decades. But I think Kaitie's absolutely right. I think that is also really where things are going to be impacting. And we're at the point also is, what will also change is when our cultural leaders and the gatekeepers are Crips or are deaf or neurodivergent. And that's happening in the UK, or was. It's beginning to be erased a bit now. But I think when you've got those people, they will also start changing the shape of the institution and the shape of theatre. And it's a long, long path we have ahead of us. But we've just got to keep on going and doing that. So I'm really grateful that, like Kaite and other people, are making these alternative approaches and ways and trying to be more inclusive in their work.
Do you want to add something?
I want to echo that and also speak to the power of working from within the belly of the beast. So I work with autistic theater makers, of course, but I am also a staff writer at Playbill. I teach at a number of universities around New York, and I work heavily with Interlochen Center for the Arts in Michigan, which is a very large training program for artists in the Midwest. And it is incredible the power that one differently abled individual can have on an organization. It is incredibly isolating. It can be quite terrifying. I have had some very difficult nights, but I also can point to very specific procedural changes that have happened because I put myself in a position to be in the room, to raise my hand and say, actually, you're not thinking about something. And I think that's a power that we all can really wield, abled or not, to be the person who is brave enough to raise the hand, because a lot of this stuff gets through because no one bothers to think about us. And if someone takes the time to even just give a little bit of pushback, oftentimes there are well-meaning people who don't even realize there's a problem. And if there's someone to bring it up, in my personal experience, like 7 times out of 10, at least within the city, I can get something through. That's not incredible rates, but it's better than 0 out of 10.
Garrett, did you want to?
Yeah. I completely agree with where this conversation is going. And I think working from the belly of the beast is important. One thing I've noticed that is very hard about being the only person with a specific experience in the system is that the industry is really hard for everyone. The industry itself is difficult. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of oppression. And I think, I can't speak for anyone else, but I find it hard to separate rejection or something because of my deafness, or am I just being rejected because it's not good? If I send my script out, are they saying no because I'm deaf and it's difficult to work with a deaf artist, or because my script isn't good enough? So it is, it's also really nice to have a non-disabled or a hearing friend to be like, hey, are you having this same experience? And then I feel justified, I feel vindicated that it's not about my deafness, at least.
Kayla, did you want to jump? I can see resonating with you.
This is Kayla speaking. I'll just continue contributing by my gestures. And then when I feel compelled to, yep.
I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Margaret.
Okay. I have a question for you, and then I have something, another thought. But I was curious, you're talking about, can you talk about how you grew the habit of articulating need? Because I feel like that is a muscle that a lot of people don't have. And it's necessary, obviously. But even for me personally, I didn't start to develop it. My own personal identity as a disabled person didn't start to emerge until around 17. Right? And then figuring out what that meant and then how to speak about it took another kind of, 10, 15 years to go. So can you talk about just the exercise of learning how to articulate need in those spaces where there may be a lot of pressure, fear, et cetera?
Absolutely. So it's kind of a two-pronged answer for me. I always say that the greatest blessing in my life is my parents. I am incredibly lucky that I was diagnosed as autistic a little after my 2nd birthday, which is unheard of, especially for someone in a femme body. That does not happen, but my mother is a bull moose and got me the care that I needed. She literally, the amount of doctors she fought with. My mom has a bookshelf at my childhood home that we jokingly refer to as the Maggie Library, and it's all of the doctor's notes that she received for me for various things from birth to when I was 18 and I moved out for college. And having that example in my house, as well as my father, who was a labor organizer and a very staunch unionist, they showed me the importance of speaking my mind, and then that got beat out of me. I was a performer for about 10 years. I have a BFA, I did tours internationally, I was working in the musical theater, and I got incredibly good at masking, because you will never meet a better actor than an autistic person trying to hide. And I was always very aware of my identity, but it was drilled into me from a very, very young age that you can know yourself and be proud of yourself, but that doesn't mean anyone else needs to know you. And the moment that I realized the fallacy of that, it was 2019. I was working at Interlochen as the head of the gender nonconforming cabin, and a camper that I had, who was about 16 at that time, came to me in tears because someone had found out that they had Tourette's. And they had been told by a different teacher at the camp that that was probably going to put a permanent limit on the lengths they could go in the performing arts. And I saw red, and I had a moment where I realized, A, I was gonna have a talk with this teacher, and B, I had lived my entire life knowing an example of an autistic individual because of my mother. That is not a normal situation. I, quote unquote, came out to my camper, and from that moment forward, I got really, really loud about my status. And I know for a fact it's cost me jobs. I have had several universities tell me that they can't take me on expressly because they don't think they can support my needs. I am not a particularly high support need individual, but for some people, even that is too much. And that's incredibly disheartening, but my experience with my camper, my time in the pandemic being unmasked for 2 straight years and feeling what it was like to walk through my life unencumbered, I can never go back, and I have kind of taken on the idea that I am going to try to take as much of the blunt force trauma as I can of breaking through as many doorways as I can so that it is easier on anyone who is walking behind me.
We've talked a little bit about some institutions that have actually been supportive. Like Garrett had mentioned, Lincoln Center, the public seems to be supportive. Are there there are plenty of institutions that are not stepping up, right? But do we see any others that are there as either support networks or giving, I mean, even if it's not resources, financial resources, but other resources or spaces to come together? Can you identify any other institutions, particularly for young people that might be, in a place where they're starting their career and they identify as disabled or deaf and they want to see sort of what those places might be?
I have one I can immediately speak to. So the funding that you were talking about, we had significant grants pulled from us this year. to the point that our Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month programming in April was dramatically changed because we did not have the resources. And leadership at New York Theater Company, which is about to put on Bacchanal at New York City Center, when they found out what was happening, they filled in our gap. And they single-handedly stepped up and said, we have enough funding in our budget. We're writing you a check to make sure these grants can still go out this year, and we'll figure out what happens from there. But that was a huge, huge step for them to take to make sure that finances and care goes in the right direction.
There's also a lot of, I can't remember who specifically mentioned it, but there's a lot of organizations that our nonprofit works with that's specifically about, what would you call it? It's mix, they, you know what I mean with EPIC?
Sort of mixed ability theater troupes for different ages.
Yeah. So we saw Epic did this fantastic production of Spring Awakening that was, it was so cool. All it is it's just a organization you can join to perform. There's no like, you know, it's not like you have to be a part of this community or whatever. It's a beautiful mix of wonderful brained people. There's another one. Action Play is another one we work with, fantastic. And then there's one called Say that I'm remembering. I believe it's for people with a stutter or with Tourette's. They invite people to show. They're like, it'll either take 45 minutes or 2 hours, and you're going to sit there the whole time and enjoy it. And it's giving people a chance to like get up on stage, perform, and not worry about like, oh, I'm taking too much time, or I'm talking too fast, or, you know.
I'd also love to just promote the Neurodivergent New Play Series, which is a company based here in New York that if you are an early career neurodivergent writer, doesn't matter where you fall within the neurodivergent spectrum, does not matter your age, does not matter where you are fully in your career, they will help you get workshops up, and rehearsals and do your full hit to feel your work in front of an audience, which can be a really difficult barrier to cross.
Garrett? Yeah. I love what you're saying about the children. I think it is very important to expose children as early and often, especially disabled children who are facing a lot of barriers. I remember growing up, I knew I wanted to be an actor, and you know, people ask me, how did the theater bug bite you? And I said, no, I came out of my mother knowing that I wanted to do this, that the stage was my home. But all I heard, well, didn't hear, but all I saw was people saying that you can't do that, you're deaf. And there were no role models, as someone mentioned, having a role model as an adult. I mean, Marlee Matlin was like, you know, the only deaf person in a major film. So I started to accept that maybe theater wasn't the place for me. And I was so incredibly lucky that at the age of 10, my local theater, Milwaukee Rep, did a deaf and hearing mixed production of Our Town. And I went at the age of 10, and I saw this beautiful, tiny deaf woman on stage. I don't know if any of you know Monique Holt, Momo. That was her. That was her first professional role back at the time, and I was so fortunate to be able to see her at the age of 10, and that one experience blew me away, and I knew, look, there's proof. If she can do it, I can do it. And the rest is history. I've been in theater ever since, and I was so lucky as well that 20 years later we came back around, and Kayla, I don't know, you remember she was in my Shed show last year, Monique was. So it was such a full circle moment to be working with my idol, literally the first person I ever saw on a stage, the person who gave me the validation. And so I'm trying to pay it forward. And last November, I got a grant from the New York Foundation of the Arts to do a reading and a workshop of my play, one of my new plays. And we performed it in Manhattan, but we also did a one-day performance at Lexington School for the Deaf. And I showed all of these kids, and I was trying to tell them and show them, these deaf kids at Lexington, you can become an actor, a writer, a director if you want. Because no one else is telling them that. Also, anytime Deaf Broadway does a show with Lincoln Center, we invite the kids from Lexington School for the Deaf. We invite kids from all of the local deaf schools, and we'll put them in the front row too, so that they can see if anyone in their life ever says that they can't become an actor, they have proof.
This is Kayla speaking. I know the question was about institutions, but what Garrett is bringing up, and I want to like lift up to the surface more, are people and individuals for support, because I feel disabled, deaf, neurodivergent, all the languages we want to use, have an opportunity to do something different. And when we are inside of institutions, it can make it blank word. I don't want to put a qualifier. Whatever you want to put there. More challenging for us to actually be in a practice of being together, to know how we are to move together in time, space, artistic practice. Yes, institution and individual artist as support, as connection, as growth, as community, as X, Y, and Z. What would happen if we coalition build and we shared, put it on each other's work on the corner of 119th and Lexington? I don't know, I'm just making shit up. But I'm saying, like, what will happen of that versus relying on institutions who we know widely, a lot of them, systemically, are not designed for us. So why go into a space that's already said no and create space for yourself? Unless that's what you want to do. I'm not knocking it. You know what I'm saying? I think there's multiple routes. I just want to highlight the route of being with individual people in thought.
Actually, Alyssa, I kind of feel like that would be an interesting way of talking about your world. You come out of the burlesque world, right? And so I feel like there's something in what Kayla's saying that might resonate with your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about institutions, I wanted to give a bit of an institutional shout out to CUNY for providing a structure from which individuals are able to create care for extreme circumstance. I was misdiagnosed with Bell's palsy 1 month before I moved to the US from Australia to start my PhD. So I started my whole PhD for the first year during COVID from my desk in Sydney. And I came, in 2 years, my face got worse and worse and worse. So I'd gone from being a full-time professional burlesque performer, and your theatrical frame is your face. It's the wink and the smile. And so I had this real dwindling of self and desire to stop performing. And I was coming into this PhD program, and so I'm like, I'm going to be thinking more than I'm dancing, or thinking about stripping more than I'm actually stripping. And it got to the stage where I sought a diagnosis here, and it turned out to be a rare form of cancer in my facial nerve called adenoid cystic carcinoma. And I had to go in for surgery to have half of my face removed. And in my head, I was thinking, like, what am I going to do about my PhD, though? Shit. How is this? This is ruined, you know, just ruining my life. And our head of department just says, we've got this. You've got this. Because I couldn't technically take a leave of absence because I would lose my visa, I would lose my health insurance. And our head of department said, we've got this. We're going to set you up with the Office of Disability. We're going to make sure that you have everything that you need. And then the community of CUNY, of the Theatre and Performance Department, were my family that came to the hospital with me every single day. My PhD supervisor, Peter Eckersol, came to chemotherapy with me. The English department put together a course on illness, cancer, and grief in autobiography and memoir. and I could rock up if I'd finished radiation for the day and see what it was. So just that kind of institutional support, wouldn't be here without it. And thank you to Cooney for keeping my health insurance. I now have a $7 million face. Thank you, Cooney.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it helps us see that it's not a simple thing as institutions bad, institutions good, right? It's a complex thing, and people are what is inside those institutions.
This is Kayla. That was like, no, it's not the institution itself, right? There was a champion inside of the people-run institution. So it's like not the institution. Who's the person? Yeah. Shout out that name, that person who linked you with this person who did. You know what I'm saying? Like not the whole thing, because we don't even know who's really up there. You know what I'm saying? Okay, in thought. And there's just, yeah.
No, I'm just 100% seconding that. That's absolutely, because these organizations, especially if they've been operating in the industry for a long time, can feel really like huge and unwieldy, right? It can kind of feel like a David taking on Goliath type of situation. However, speaking from inside of Playbill, Playbill has been operating for 140 years, providing programs in New York City. It is 4 writers, 2 photographers, 2 social media people, 1 videographer, 1 editor-in-chief. That is the entire magazine. That is a handleable number of people, but you would not necessarily know that if you just looked at it from the outside. I like to think of organizations almost like machines, and you take it apart to find the gear that's not working, and you either oil it or you change it out.
Garrett, go ahead.
I completely agree with everything here. And the only reason my 2 years at Hunter, where I got my MFA in playwriting, the only reason those 2 years were as amazing as they were is exactly the experience of one person, Christine Scarfuto, who is the program head. She fought for me all the way, through and through. I didn't even ask her. She's the head of the playwriting program. And I applied, and I had never met her, but she took me under her wing. She knew nothing about deaf culture at the time, but she was willing to learn and willing to fight for me and provide every resource I asked for. And that unparalleled level, I was like, you're fighting so hard for me? It is so important to find someone who believes in you and will fight for you, especially in a system or an institution that is largely indifferent. That one person can make such a huge impact.
And this is Kayla, and that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
There's also like, sorry, now I'm getting hot. I'm going from my gestures to my body.
Oh, I thought you can keep going.
No, you don't want that.
Okay.
In thought.
Well, so so many thoughts. I agree with everything. But I would say I'm ultimately, this is a difficult industry, hands down. That was articulated, and that's just it. But I feel, ultimately, I hold on to this, and maybe that's just my personality, but I hold on to this sense of great dissatisfaction. I've been working as a professional actor and theater professional for 20 years, 25 years, right? And there has been progress, right? But I'm sorry, the actor who was in the piece, I don't know their pronouns, in Kate's piece. Bree, right? They said, until we control the means of production, then it is a gift that is given to us that can be revoked at any time. And I think we're still very much in that place, right? Because we don't have a Shondaland. Ultimately, I think that's where I think other communities have worked very hard to get there, right? We don't necessarily have a Crazy Rich Asians, whatever parallel you want to make, right? And I think that's going to take some time. If we've had kind of the first shows on Broadway that deal with specific segments of the community, right? And then where was the follow-up? Maybe one person gets cast in a production or so-and-so and so-and-so, right? But what happens next? And I think other communities have faced this struggle, and my concern, like, how do we get the cohesion amongst ourselves to push forward? It's that sense of there is power in numbers, there is power in mobilization, and in terms of institutions, we have to enter these spaces, right? And we have to do the hard work. Institutions are made up of people, but I would say the majority of the people don't have any knowledge of what it means to do this work, create this work, or be part of this community. And that takes a lot of time, effort, and energy for that learning, for that gap in knowledge to be mitigated, right? And I just, that's going to, so the progress at Lincoln Center is good, right? But how often do you perform there? And are you on their main stage is a question, just a question, right? I have a residency at the Public, which is a 2-year residency that took me 10 years to get, and ends in a few months, right? With no discernible sort of like next step. Or to get that, it's going to take a lot of energy and effort to continue that, right? So I think this is important. You know, it takes a Herculean effort to kind of get to, I guess the top of one mountain is the bottom of another, right? But it's about this kind of sustained, rigorous kind of follow-up and commitment that takes, I think, community cohesion, because it can't be done just through these, through our small little, these beachheads that I feel like we're making. And again, it just goes back to my sense of how do we do this? How, if at all, can we do this together? And there's a cohesion missing within our community that I feel like other communities have worked and fought for. And that may just be the makeup of these communities, the deaf and disabled communities. I don't know. But having worked I've had a company for 15 years, which I never expected to have, right? But it's always starting back it feels like always starting back at zero. And that's a little bit of the nature of the beast, but how, when does it kind of, where do you get to where's the next plateau, and where's the next plateau, and where's the next plateau? And how do you continue to push further and further and further until you are, quote unquote, established? And is that even possible? Wah, wah.
Actually, we've been spending a lot of time talking about like institutions and infrastructure, but I want to talk to you as artists too, and I want to have a conversation about how your own embodied experiences have influenced the work that you make, so that it's not necessarily always have to be put in this box of disabled or deaf performance, but you're artists who have different embodied experiences, and how has that influenced your writing, the form and content. But I'm actually very interested in the form aspects of the work, but so I'd like to hear that. Garrett, I saw you had your hand up first, and then Katie.
Just briefly, and then I'll pass to you. I find myself, as a playwright, continuing to fight the mindset. All of the plays and the movies and the TV shows historically that we see with deaf folks are written by hearing people, directed by hearing people. So, what the public knows about the deaf experience is filtered through a hearing brain and a hearing worldview. So what I'm trying to present my authentic work as a person with the lived experience of being born and raised deaf, I often get people saying that it doesn't match, it doesn't align with what they've seen, but of course it doesn't, because they have not been seeing the authentic story. And so presenting my story authentically, but in a way that people find believable, based on their skewed worldview so far, has been a big and interesting challenge.
Yeah, I mean, these days I consider myself more of an academic or a pedagogue than a performer. My particular flavor of disability involves a lot of chronic pain, and I get very tired easily, and night times are not my favorite time of day. So performing's on the back burner for now. But it's been a really interesting time coming back to teaching full time. I've been teaching for over a decade, but coming back to it full time as a disabled educator and teaching enabled practice has been painful. I find myself running into walls a lot. But the thing that I have discovered that has been really exciting and that I'm starting to dig into as a pedagogue is the difference between skills-based movement practice and principles-based movement practice. And the freedom that is provided in principles-based movement practice, both for myself and for my students, that has just become something really exciting. And it's right there. It's not anything that I made up or brought into the space. It's always been there. I just put a name on it. And I think if we just start being able to really see what's needed and be able to put a name to it, I think we can start from there, right? Once I was able to get clear and understand that principles-based teaching is where I need to be for my body and what's best for me and my students in the room, then I felt so much freer. I felt like I had so much better understanding of myself in the space, of my students in the space, where we were going, what we were doing, and how we were getting there together. Thank God I'm a deviser, so I can kind of do whatever I want. So, yeah.
Jessica.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm more of a performer rather than, I don't write anything yet. But I find the work I do when I am performing or doing music theater is like, I have to do it because it's literally the only thing that my brain just like stops telling me all of the things I hear every other, part of the day. I'm walking around, I'm like, you're walking weird, people think you're walking weird, people think you're walking weird, you said something stupid, blah, 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 blah. Always like, but I go on stage and then I'm like, I can just like, just do the thing, just sing the thing, and it's like the freedom I feel, I black out a little bit, and then I come back off the stage and I'm like, that was awesome, and my brain was off the whole time, but just the freedom of getting to be like, yeah, I may not be able to communicate as effectively as you, Joe Schmo, but like, I can go on stage and convey what I've been needing to say or feel, or I'm like, this is how communication works.
I want to jump off what Katie was saying about embracing my chronic fatigue. Coming from burlesque is very late night shows, and cabaret spots normally call times are 10 p.m. and you might be on at 1:30, and I've been going to bed at 9, very happily so. And so that's coming with a whole heap of new challenges, and it effectively means like a lot of people who are suffering from these things are immediately, it's inaccessible. To put on a good show, to be able to have your body do what it's able to do. And then for me, it's thinking about, well, what's my finite energy? What am I able to give the audience, and what is the audience able to give to me? In my great big facial jigsaw, my master surgeons in 15 hours rebuilt my face using portions of my leg, muscle, nerve, and tissue, and rewired it so that my facial nerve, my smile, has regenerated. But I walked with a Zimmer frame for some time. I couldn't leave my house for 3 months, and then I was walking with a cane for another 6 months. And so when I came back to do my first burlesque number, it was not with acrobatic tricks and drop splits. It was from the power of standing still and saying, I see you, you see me, and you know I'm damn sexy. And that knowingness, that intention, that exchange is power. And now you'll know I'm going to bed pretty soon.
Yeah. This is Kayla. I have low sight. So in terms of form, I use visual and verbal descriptions as a creative tool in movement generation. So often I would embody something and then be in a process with a describer to describe the movement, and that helps me refine and clarify. And then that same verbal description is then live in the performance. So it is accessible. Well, one, before it affects my form, I ask myself, who is it that I want to be with inside of this performance? I know I'm making this performance for Black people. I know I'm making this performance for blind and low sight folks. That's my center. And I'm not saying I'm gonna make it accessible for everyone. And inside of Blackness, right, we're not monolithic. There are deaf Black people. What are the other embodiments of Blackness, right? So those are the things that I'm attending to. So my values and the work in itself will inherently change in relationship to who it is that I'm trying to be in community with for that particular work. So with the descriptions being said, that anyone could do the dance, because I'm offering just a description and I'm inviting curiosity and play. So every day the show could be different, because you're moving with description, not with something that has been set and that we've rehearsed. So however you come to the show that day, whether you're in pain or you feel great, you get to participate as much as you can for that experience, right? So to answer your question, I mean, descriptions are my center because I'm prioritizing myself and my community. And then as I continue, I invite other embodiments into my considerations for the work that I make, in which that is value aligned to me as an artist in thought.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we'll turn now and take some questions. Is everyone cool with that? Okay. Does anyone have a question to start things off?
So I'm a filmmaker, and I'm going to tell a short little thing, is that I never considered myself disabled. I think I still don't. But I've been colorblind my entire life, and as a camera person, as a cinematographer, I had to really hide it. And what's interesting is how technology has enabled me now to shoot in a way that no one would ever know. And it's changed. So it's like over a 30-year career, things I couldn't do on film, I can definitely do digitally. And I've shot thousands of hours of footage, and I've recently shot a feature film and a new short, everything like that. And so one of the things that I'm curious about, and why I came here today, was to find out how you all feel about, because I didn't realize this was going to be mostly about institutional conversations, but more about like how you want to see portrayals of people who are differently abled in relation to people who don't consider themselves differently abled when they're not standing out. Because what I've noticed in my own casting is that I've basically said, okay, well, you're differently abled, but we're going to put you in a scene and no one's going to know. And that's worked for me. But I'm just curious what you guys think based on all of this conversation.
There is a common phrase within the autistic community that goes, if you've met an autistic person, you've met one autistic person. That is true, I believe, of every single disabled person, and also true of every single human being. But specifically with neurodivergence, if you are casting authentically, your greatest resource is your actor and that person, because they will tell you how they live authentically in their life. And dictating how they have to present to be read authentically can oftentimes be much more isolating than simply asking them to exist in space as themselves.
Does anyone else want to respond to that? Alyssa?
I think you're touching on a really interesting question here, and it's the aesthetics of disability, aka we can be cast as the freak show. And if you're not performing your disability, well, are you really disabled? And in that kind of representation, I mean, it can be a very narrow viewpoint. But for all of those people who are disabled and not visibly disabled, or indeed mask their disability so well, simply being there, again, this was the conversation, is being in the room. Your input isn't just about what you look like, it's the input artistically, but it's also the energy that you're giving. You're going to be listening to not just other able-bodied people, but the spectrum of different abilities, different worldviews, and that will only make every single artistic creation, every single collaboration, educational, like everything more beautiful.
Garrett?
I loved that question. And I think this comes back to how it is easy to portray, if it's authentic or not, but to portray a support of disability by casting a disabled actor. But I think the best way to actually support that disabled artist is, hold on. By putting those disabled people where they might not necessarily be seen. Disabled writers, disabled directors, disabled staff, crew. If you are doing that, then I feel like you are really supporting the community. If you're putting an actor on the screen and saying, well, that's good enough, it makes me feel like it's a little bit for show. I remember one time in grad school, we had a discussion with one TV writer who started as a playwright. And they were writing for a TV show that had a deaf character in it. And they had a writer's room, and they had many writers. So I asked, well, while you were writing this deaf character, did you consider bringing in a deaf writer for the episode? And they said, oh, no, we just went to the deaf actor and we asked them what we needed to put into the script, and then we did. So I felt, first off, you're not paying that actor for that additional work. You're asking them to do more labor for no additional pay. And it's not their role. They're showing up as an actor, and now they're also a consultant. You are bringing and paying a writer. You should be doing that to produce an authentic script.
Anybody else want to respond to that on the panel? No? That was a good punctuation to that question. I think it was great. Anyone else have a question they'd like to ask? Okay.
Hi, this is a question mostly for the, I'm sorry, remind me the name of the organization, the Autistic Theater Makers
The Autistic Theater Makers Alliance.
Yes, specifically because I am also autistic and, hey, also at war with my BFA, but point being, it's like, I find that this whole experience of trying to go through college, and probably it's going to get worse as I go into the industry, has been difficult, and just going into an industry that seems like it's really not built for us. How do you have any advice for just how do you manage that? How do you even get up in the morning?
Hi.
Especially right now.
Yeah, so I had this great thing where I didn't know I was autistic until I met Maggie, and Maggie said, hey, maybe you should check that out. And that was after I graduated college. So yeah, I went through all of college not knowing I was autistic and being like, why am I having the worst time of my life? Like, I don't know how to talk to people. People are hanging out without me. I feel like I'm missing them. Yeah. But you know what's crazy is, and maybe this is just me, life seems to get better after you get out of college. Because in college I was pretty introverted in big groups because but now I have a fantastic found family here who they put up with my crazy antics. They all know everything about me. We had a Shrek 2 party. Anyway, that's my favorite thing. You'll find your people, I promise.
100%. And the other thing that I'll also add, I don't know your personal situation, but statistically, autistic feminine body-born women have a slower mental puberty. You most likely, depending on what your personal medical situation is, are probably about 4 to 5 years mentally, developmentally, in terms of self-actualization behind. And that's not a negative. That's actually freeing.
No, that makes so much sense.
So the way to think about it, so are you 21, 22? 21. Yes, so if you're 21 right now, you might roughly be around 16 in terms of the self-identity and dealing with the shame that comes with that. We get a lot of media from abled mental individuals talking about sort of the trials of being a 16-year-old girl, so to speak, but then you're supposedly supposed to have it together by your early 20s. I am currently 27. I did not feel like I knew who I was until I was 25 in a real self-actualized way. I've always had a vague sense, but in I know what the boundaries of who I am in my body right now. That is not something I had in college. And also in college, especially when you are in a BFA program, even the best intentioned of programs, you are kind of inherently forced to compare because you are a fish in a bucket trying to get cast in a show. Yeah. And that's incredibly difficult for abled people as well. And while yes, technically, if you're going into a performance career or anything within any career, you are kind of still a fish in a bucket. That bucket's about to get way, 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 way bigger. And you're not going to be spending 24/7 with the same people in the same bucket. And if there's someone who is making your life hell, congrats, you get to get away from them. And finding your people, learning who you are, and recognizing what your values are, I think for every human being, if you are working in theater in any way, I think there's 2 questions you have to ask yourself. What is the thing that you value the most in this world? How far are you willing to go for that? And that's not just in a career way, that's in a personal life way as well. And once you're able to define what those questions are for you, and they're not static, those answers can and probably will change throughout your life. Once you have those North Stars, so to speak, it makes it easier, at least in my head, to step out of a situation and look at it in a way that feels less pressurized. And it's actually part of why I became a writer, is because it allows me the opportunity to take time and consider what I want to say, rather than sort of feeling put on the spot in the audition room every single day. However, teaching also is kind of like putting myself on the spot every day, because I have no idea what kind of questions are going to get thrown at me. And it does get easier with practice. It is a muscle like anything else. Your brain is an organ, but also think of it as something that has to be trained like a muscle.
Any other questions people have? Oh, I'm sorry, Greg.
Oh, I was going to that. There are a lot more resources and support out there now than there were 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, and I think at the end of the day, become the best artist that you possibly can. Again, seems to be the golden rule. I think everything that we're trying, all this talk of identity and it's important. We have to talk about our differences until they're not so different anymore, I think. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to just have space to do that here, right? But I think ultimately the goal is to just create a space where people can show up and do what they do well, right? Like, you want to be an actor? Then here's the space where you can just be an actor. We've taken everything into consideration that you can, where you will be able to do that, right? And the goal is that knowledge will spread to space after space after space after space after space, the more that happens, and the more that knowledge gets spread. But I think the supports are there. You may be in the shit right now, right? But you're actually in you're in a space where you can learn, you can fail, and the repercussions are more or less minor, right? And that's what you're supposed to be. That's where you're supposed to be, and that's what you're supposed to be doing right now. But know that you are right where you need to be, and when you get out of here, if you still want to pursue this profession, that the supports are in place in a way that they weren't a decade ago, 2 decades ago.
Garrett, did you? Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Greg. And when you get out into that real world, it is important to find or make space where you can be yourself. That is a big reason why Deaf Broadway became so important, because we are deaf-led. All of the artists in the room are deaf. And, unfortunately, all of the other plays that have deaf characters tend to be run in a hearing space with a hearing director and a hearing writer and a hearing producer. Deaf Broadway is, I don't want to say 100% deaf, but because we do have hearing staff that supports us, but it is deaf-led, and deaf people are always making the decisions in the lead. Every person in the room knows signs, so it's an entirely deaf space. It is a voice-off, ASL-only room. And so when deaf actors come into that room, they feel at home, and they feel that this is a space designed for them, with them in mind. And I've heard many testimonials from actors who we have worked with, who have worked in many professional productions over, decades of careers, movies, TV, stage, Broadway, all of it. And they come into our space and they say, I have never felt this before. I have never felt so included. I've never felt so at home. The experience of being in a room that is your people, your language, there is nothing like that. So it is important to find a space that makes you feel that way.
I want to take just one more question, and then I know it's been a long day and everyone's really put in a lot of work, so I want to thank everybody for that. Is there any other questions someone would like to ask? Okay, Rue.
I think I really like to ask this question when I meet artists who are further in their career in the industry, that I just wanted to ask what your artistic goals, final goals are as an artist, if you have anything that you could share with us.
I can give you a very esoteric answer, if that's okay. No matter how long my life is, if it's 24 hours, 24 years, 80 more years somehow, I want to always stay curious. I want to always tell stories in whatever form they come. And I want to love. Because my entire career and my entire self is built around loving what I love. I am lucky that my special interest as an autistic person is musical theater. And I have devoted my entire life to it. I am the first English-speaking individual to have a master's degree specifically in musical theater history. I created the program at NYU. I created my position at Playbill. I have created teaching programs, and I love that it has a benefit for other people. It's because I wanted it, and because I loved it so much, and because I don't think of life in terms of a legacy building project. I think of it as a cultivation project, where what I'm cultivating is things that make me wake up in the morning and smile and exhale and go, oh, I can't wait to know more about that. And I'm notorious for when I'm writing, I write in what I call flow state, where I wrote a book in 6 months. I wrote a 382-page book in 6 months. Yes, that is edited. I promise it's not crazy dribble, because I would get so, for lack of a better term, lost in the sauce of just deep, fascinating curiosity. And I gave myself the freedom to info dump and share as much as I could. And that is my favorite place to be. So my goal as an artist is to try and carve out as much time in the time I have left to be in that place.
I want to be stripping when I'm 95. And I always wanted to be a stripper. And I was a classical musician that had a very bad perfectionism and anxiety when I performed classical music, and I'd have panic attacks when I went off stage. And so I wanted to go. I just decided to be a stripper. I was studying journalism, and I was always told, like, you need a real career. You need to be taken serious. You're a smart girl. You're a beautiful girl. See, those two things get put, not in parallel together. And so I went into this world where I took a whole heap of evening gowns into a gentleman's club and made up a fake name and started having fun performing and making money performing and finding a community performing of people who were also beautiful and smart and traditionally put in a place of less. And this was in the mid-2000s, and the neo-burlesque revival was kind of just starting in Australia in the mid-2000s, although Garrick was performing stripping with a number of people on the Lower East Side around them as well. And so we didn't really know what the hell we were doing. We were just having fun and putting sparkles on a lot of things, but we were making really bold political statements about things that made us angry, things that made us feel good, and speaking in a way that we didn't have a language for. And it wasn't until, sometimes you just don't really need a grand plan. You're like, this is my career arc. You just end up somewhere because you're enjoying something and you're connecting with people that you're finding a generative community. And the first time I came to America in 2012, when I was 21 years old, I went to something called the Burlesque Hall of Fame in Las Vegas, the Miss Exotic World competition. And every year, it's a strippers reunion. Every year they invite the legends of burlesque back to perform. So these were women performing in their heyday from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And they put their costumes back on and they do their original routines. And so seeing a 92-year-old woman, typing rest in peace, do her original strip with such little movement in her mobility scooter with boas coming off the back of her scooter, and just seeing just true sexiness and confidence. That's what I want. No grand plan. Just have fun. Take your clothes off.
Jessica.
Yeah. I also am someone who would love to have a specific plan because I'm very Virgo. But unfortunately, that is literally not how it works in performance, because you audition and then you wait, and then randomly 2 months later they call you and you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to Michigan next week. Like, okay, cool. My thing that keeps me going as an artist, or what I intend to do, is I'm just gonna keep proving them wrong. Now we have one specific person who's telling me what I can't do, and I've achieved almost all of those things, except for writing a poem so far. But now I have a guy be like, I bet you can't do that, and I'm like, I live for my artistic nature has always kind of been driven by I bet you can't do that. I'll just keep proving them wrong.
Anyone else want to share? And it's a big, heavy question in some way. No? Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for all of the time that they put in. I know it's late and everyone's worked really hard, and I'm so grateful for having you come here, and also for just being so vulnerable and open and generous with all of us. So thank you so much for that. And I hope that the Segal can start doing more of these events so that we can have more voices in the room. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
If I could promote one thing really quickly. Deaf Broadway is doing Waitress at Lincoln Center this summer, July 23rd, for free. So come.